We spend years learning about the Pythagorean theorem, memorizing lots of dates of obscure wars and treaties, and analyzing poetry from a long time ago. And sure, that stuff is fine. But when we graduate, we have absolutely no idea how to pay taxes, how to nail a job interview, or even how to budget our first paycheck. This is why I am standing here to say that this house believes that education should prioritize preparing students for employment over general education. Now, let me define the motion. When we say prioritize, we're not saying that we should abolish general education entirely. We are not saying that we should stop teaching history, literature, or science. That would be absolutely ridiculous. What we are saying is this: right now, the balance between the two is completely out of control. We spend about 80% of our time on general academic subjects and maybe 20% on practical career ready skills. We are proposing that we either flip that or at least make it 50-50. We want schools to treat employability skills with the same seriousness as every other academic subject. This isn't about like dumbing down education. It's about making education more relevant, and it is about making sure that when you walk across, when you graduate, you actually have a fighting chance in the real world. So today I'm going to give you two arguments why we should support this motion. My first argument is that the current system is leaving students underprepared for the real world. I'm not here to say that learning history or literature is a waste of time. Understanding the world, thinking critically, and appreciating culture is all very important, and I believe that. But the problem is right now we're treating these general and academic education like it's the only thing that matters in life. We spend all of our time on academic subjects, and then we just hope students figure like the rest of life on their own, and that's not fair. Some students have parents who can teach them how to network, how to budget, and how to write cover letters, but others don't. So the kids who already have the privilege get ahead, and the rest of us are left clueless on how the real world works. All we're asking for is a better balance, and we're not saying to drop algebra. We're just saying we're saying to we're asking for the schools to teach us how to write good emails and budget paychecks. We're not okay. This isn't about throwing away old stuff. It's about adding new stuff for the education system that actually helps us survive. Because right now we're graduating with good grades, but no clue how to navigate the job market. My second argument is that prioritizing employment actually makes general education more meaningful. People think this motion is about sacrificing general education for prioritizing employment, but actually it's about making it better. When you understand why you're learning something, you are way more engaged. Right now, we learn math and science without actually knowing, by just like memorizing formulas without knowing how they apply to real jobs or real problems. But when we prioritize employment, you learn math, like you can figure out how you can figure out what you are learning uh and why you're learning it. So then general education becomes from boring and irrelevant to actually being useful, and you actually want to learn because you can see where these subjects are actually taking you. So in conclusion, we're not saying to ditch all these academic subjects. We're saying to teach us, for these education system to actually teach us how to actually survive in the real world. Prioritizing employment skills doesn't make education worse. It makes it relevant, and it makes it more useful, and it makes it more fair. So let's prepare students for the real world and not the exam hall. So we are proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
The proposition may tell you that they can prepare students for employment while still preserving general education. We agree that employment preparation belongs in school, but that is not what this motion asks for. This House asks us to prioritize employment over general education. Schools will naturally allocate more time, funding, and counseling and attention to subjects and programs with direct labor market outcomes. general education still exists, but it will become secondary under their side, meaning students are encouraged to treat it as less important and they won't focus on that and they won't have as much knowledge that they're supposed to. And to rebuttal the next statement that they said, when we graduate, we won't have any idea how to do taxes, how to win job interviews, and so on. We agree that, that schools should teach practical life skills like financial literacy and interview techniques. However, those skills do not require making employment the primary purpose of education. Schools can still teach taxes, budgeting, CV writing, and interview skills while still providing a broad education that allows students to explore their interests and develop as individuals. Now that I've already stated my rebuttals, I'd like to move on to my first argument. Education should build adaptable people, not lock students into one career path. Judges, here's the context that you need to understand. The purpose of education has never been to simply prepare people for their first job. Education exists to help people discover their interests, develop critical thinking, and build the knowledge and skills they rely on throughout their entire lives. While employment is certainly important, school is meant to prepare people for life, not just for the labor market. The problem begins when education starts prioritizing employment over general education. We're not saying that schools should ignore employment. We fully agree that students should graduate with employable skills. The difference is that under this motion, employment becomes the primary goal of education. Once one objective is prioritized, schools inevitably devote more curriculum time, funding, and resources towards it, leaving less space for broad learning and exploration. This changes the way students approach education. So instead of viewing schools as a place to discover their strengths and interests, they begin believing that the values of education depend entirely on getting a job. Success stops being about developing as a person and becomes about fitting the current demands of the job market. This burden falls especially hard on young people because they're expected to make a major career decision before they're even mature enough to understand what they truly want. Many students are still exploring their passions, abilities, and future goals. Even if schools do not force students into a single occupation, prioritizing employment naturally pushes them towards a career-specific pathway much earlier than they otherwise would. Students therefore have fewer opportunities to explore different subjects before making one of the biggest decisions of their life. Now, why does this likely happen? Because schools shape students' priorities through their curriculum guidance and assessment, and emphasizing employment encourages students to choose subjects that would appear useful for the future careers. As a result, many feel pressured to specialize earlier instead of exploring a wide range of interests, abilities, and it makes it more likely that students will commit to career-specific pathways before they're mature enough to make informed long-term decisions. Now, why is it so urgent that the education needs to focus on general education and adaptability over the preparation for the job market? The labor market constantly changes. Technology replaces jobs and new industries emerge, and careers that are in demand today may no longer exist by the time the students graduate. If education focuses too heavily on current job labor market needs, students become less prepared for future changes, which is why we have to have general education, because general education gives the students flexibility to adapt. Instead of teaching students one narrow set of technical skills, it develops critical thinking and communication and creativity, problem solving, and the ability to continue learning throughout life. These are transferable skills that employers value in every industry, and that will remain useful when the economies change. We prepare students not just for their first job, but for every job that they might have after that. Now, why does this matter? It protects students from making life-shaping decisions before they're ready. Instead of locking them onto the pathways that might not suit their interests or future needs, they receive the freedom to explore first and specialize later. We produce adaptable people, not just immediately employable workers. So for all these reasons, please oppose. Thank you.
So first, in this speech, I will do two things. First, I will rebut to the opposition first speaker. Then I will develop my two arguments in support of the government side. So first, for my rebuttals, the opposition is trying to prove our case as corporate and soulless, and they want you to believe that school focuses on, like, if school focuses on jobs, then we will turn students into like robots and only know how to work. But first, you need to look at the reality of like being a student today. First, workforce is where life happens. So opposition is saying that schools are supposed to teach like students to know how to live a life instead of just teaching them how to like get in or fit in the job market. First, the labor market isn't some dark or robotic factory. It's where we interact with the society. So when you prepare a student for employment, you are basically teaching them how to collaborate with a team, resolve conflicts, communicate professionally, like manage deadlines, etc. Like you can name it. And these aren't just like worker drone skills. These are exact tools required to navigate the adult life successfully. Second of all, the op claims that we are locking 15-year-old into into like a single career, like a single career forever. And this is completely wrong because, as stated in the info slide, preparing for employment means teaching practical vocations and skills that are actually in demand. And when you learn these things like data analysis, financial planning, or digital communication, you aren't just getting trapped in one job, you are getting a highly versatile toolkit that you can use anywhere and anytime you want. Where actually, what actually traps students is spending years on a general education and not actually specifically telling the students how to actually get into the job market and actually communicating with the society. And graduating with zero marketable skills, which basically gives the students actually gives the students no option at all. Okay, now moving on to my first argument, which is aligning education with real world economic demands. So our like my first substantive argument is that for education to have any actual value, it must align with what the real world economy desperately needs right now. So the current generation and the current general education system forces everyone to spend thousands of hours studying a massive spectrum and curriculum of random fields that they usually have zero connections to the job we end up working with. For example, you have to learn about all these other foreign languages, but then and you end up being a physicist, or you end up being a doctor. Like there isn't as much places as you can use where you can use what you've learned at school. And all of this time that is wasted at school could be used to actually educate these students about the working society and how they can actually fit in this community better. Um, we have like millions of graduates who are unemployed or stuck in minimum wage retail jobs because their general degrees didn't teach them a trade or modern skill. And now moving on to my second argument, adapting to the rapid pace of technological disruption and also advancement. So the general education model moves at a very slow pace. It relies on old textbooks and static curricula that takes years to update. But when with the real workforce right now, technologies like artificial intelligence, automation, and advanced softwares are completely rewriting and also recreating how business operate every single day. So this is why schools should teach students how to actually use or utilize their utilize their ideas and fit into this job market with more ease to help them with unemployment and also jobs. So this is why our team is proud to propose.
All right, so moving first into my rebuttals and then onto my arguments. Now, firstly, onto my rebuttals against what the opposing team has just mentioned. They mentioned how the current system leaves students underprepared for their jobs and how, we're giving people the things that they actually need in order to sustain themselves within the current job market. Now, when they say that the current system leaves students underprepared for these jobs, that just simply is not true. Although yes, students will be more prepared under their side of the house. We ask them this: how are you going to prepare students for you're preparing students for jobs, not preparing them to become employed. Because here's the thing that actually matters. We're inside of the current job market, people don't look at your skills. People don't look at how actually talented you are at doing a job or not. What most employers are going to look at is your credentials. What most employers are going to look at is which university that you graduated from, not mostly your skills or something. That is the reality of the job market that we live in right now. So we don't see how leaving students underprepared is such an exclusive harm under our side of the house, when under both sides of the house, employment is still very hard to come by, especially for a lot of students if they don't receive an adequate, a university education inside of a good university or have good credentials or something. And you've also mentioned how we give people a good toolkit for any job. And then after this, you say that you're aligning education with real world demands. By aligning education with real world demands, aren't you basically locking your students into jobs that, everyone is demanding? You're locking students into jobs like specializing in artificial intelligence or maybe healthcare, for example, rather than giving them the toolkit to succeed in every single job, but you're rather specializing inside of jobs that are high in demand. So we don't see, actually, we actually think this is bad because we think that your team is being contradictory here. And now that we've dismantled your team's case, I'd like to move on towards my arguments. And inside of my arguments, I'll be talking about the social stigma surrounding jobs and also about the role of education inside of the current job market. So now about the social stigma surrounding jobs, there is a large social expectation, even right now, to pursue jobs that guarantee success, such as healthcare, for example, reducing innovation and setting toxic expectations on students to pursue jobs that society sees fit for them, rather than pursuing jobs that, they actually want to pursue. If education focuses on employment, this social stigma will only be institutionalized under the education system, worsening it and creating a more toxic expectation on these students. This will lead to a lack of innovation as society focuses rather on jobs that are already in demand rather than newer or more niche industries that could be developed even further. What's even worse is the burden on the students, as their social status depends on the status of their job. If you don't work in healthcare, for example, if you don't work in computer science, then they think that you're a failure because of the fact that your job does not meet the social expectation of what a job should be. And this is only going to be institutionalized because you're literally teaching students how to be employed. You're literally teaching students how to get a job. So we think that because of this, it's only going to worsen the social stigma surrounding jobs. And also, to expand further about the role of education, like I've already said, employers don't look at how skilled or talented you are; they look at your credentials. So we think that whenever the government team can't say anything about how the employment rate is going to rise, because the employment rate is going to stay the same under both sides of the house. Because as we've already mentioned, these employers will not focus mainly on these students' skills. They're only going to focus on these students' credentials and their connections. For example, the things that actually matter in getting employed, but might not matter when you're actually, employed, which is why this motion should fall. Thank you.
As government whip, my role is to attack the opponent's the opposition side's extensions, defend our extensions, and describe the main class in this debate and show why government effectively wins all of them. Okay, first let me address opposition's extension. Opposition argues that education should provide broad knowledge because it helps students develop into more adaptable, multi-skilled people who are better prepared for life. They also say education should be about developing as a person, not just getting a job, and that broad education helps students figure out what they actually want to do. That sounds appealing, but it misses the real problem with the current world. Too often, general education just teaches broad ideas without giving students a clear sense of application. So while opposition says it makes students more adaptable, in practice it often leaves them knowing a little about everything, but not enough to be useful in any real setting. Our side is not saying students should only learn job skills. We're saying education should prioritize employment, which still leaves room for general development. The difference is that our model makes sure the most important goal is preparing students for the real world first, then to develop as a person and develop multi-directionally. And on the claim that education should be more about developing as a person than getting a job, we agree that education is more than employment, but that does not mean employment is unimportant. For most students, having the ability to earn a living is the foundation for all independence, stability, and growth personally. If students are not prepared for work, then all the personal development just becomes abstract and does not help them survive after school. Their point about helping students choose what they actually want to do also only works in theory. In reality, many students cannot afford to spend years exploring vague possibilities. They need direction towards the jobs that they actually want and a realistic path into the workforce or jobs they actually want. Our model actually helps choice by giving students clear exposure to in-demand and jobs outside of school, so they can make informed decisions based on both interest and opportunity and their individual skills. Second, let me defend our extensions. We showed that the current system can leave kids underprepared for life. Too often, students may leave school with plenty of theory, but very little practical ability. They know facts, but they do not know how to actually apply them. So even if general education may sound valuable, it's not enough if students cannot use it after graduation. So finally, we show that this model makes adapting to change easier. The job market changes constantly, new industries emerge, and students need to be prepared for these shifts. A system focused on employment can respond faster to these needs, while a purely general system is often too slow and can disconnect them from reality. So opposition also attacks our extension by saying that students will be prepared for job, but only for employment, and that employers care more about resumes and university than actual skills. But that misunderstands our model. We're not saying education should train students for one specific job and nothing else. We're saying it should make them into employable, meaning they have the practical abilities, discipline, and adaptability to enter working and the real world successfully. In fact, this is stronger than their model because general education often leaves students with really a lot of theory but no clear direction. Our model gives them something that works across many jobs. And so even if employers look at resumes or university, what ultimately matters is whether students can actually perform. And that is something that opposition cannot take away, that to have a job, you still need to be effective at performing it. And our system is better at pursuing that. So now let's weigh this debate by looking at the clashes. First, we weigh the relevance versus the abstract ideas. So opposition gives you broad education in theory, but we give you education that actually prepares students for what comes in real life. And secondly, whether this learning is actually meaningful or just wasted effort. Opposition's model risks teaching students things they will never use. Our model makes learning purposeful because students can see how it connects to their employment and future life in the workforce. So third, adaptability versus third is about the adaptability and how it affects the schooling. Opposition wants a one-size-fits-all model centered on general development, but we want a system that can actually adjust to many different changes and better serve students in the real life. So even if opposition says general education has value, and we do not deny that, that does not change the fact that education should first and foremost prepare students for life after school. For those reasons, proposition clearly wins, and we proudly propose. Thank you.
As the opposition whip in this debate, I'll rebuttal and dismantle team government's arguments and rebuttals. Moving on to my first rebuttal. Team government has said that rapid pace of technology can replace many jobs, so schools should teach skills that fit into available job markets. However, this applies to both sides, that technology can replace many jobs. However, on government side, they depend on the chance that the jobs they teach in school, that the skills and job and specialized education that they teach in school will match the demand in job that has not been replaced, and hope that has not been replaced by technology. On our side, students have a higher level of flexibility, and they can fit into any jobs in the future, even if it's been replaced by technology. This means on our side, students are actually able to adapt and fit into the job market better than if we had prioritized preparing for jobs that may actually be replaced by technology. Moving on to my next rebuttal, team government has said that students need a direction to get the jobs that they want. However, this is not true, as we have already said that students have the right to be able to explore the jobs that they want, and they can get this through general education because they are able to explore many jobs and learn about and have the skills that they need for those jobs. To add on, if they have the ability to explore, they will also be able to adapt and fit into the job market better than if we had prioritized teaching them specific for skills for a job. Because of this adaptability and exploration, they're able to fit into the future job market better than if we used a specific if we specifically taught them for jobs in demand. Moving on to my next rebuttal, team government has said that a system of employment can help them adapt to a changing job market. This is similar to what I said previously. This is not true, as general skills and knowledge can allow students to adapt better and faster. Our model helps this more, as with general knowledge, knowledge, students are able to adapt more with a general knowledge and a broader knowledge that allows them to try other jobs if they've already been replaced by technology or other things. With their employment system, students have a less broad knowledge and skills, which are and their skills are more specific, which makes them not able to adapt to a changing job market as well. Because of all the reasons that we have said, please oppose.
Judges, the main problem with team government's arguments is that their model has been inconsistent throughout this entire debate. They have continuously changed what prioritizing students for employment actually means because they could not defend the consequences of their own case. At first, they argued that schools should teach students knowledge that align with their future careers. We prove why this inevitably pushes students to specialize earlier, placing pressure on young people to commit to careers before they're mature enough to understand their interests and abilities. And instead of answering their harm, they changed their model. Now they shift their claim to employment preparation simply meaning teaching universal life skills such as tax and budgeting and job interviews. But this creates a fundamental contradiction. Throughout the debate, government repeatedly claimed that their model would produce graduates who are better prepared for the workforce and create professionals like doctors, engineers, and other skilled workers. But those benefits cannot come from teaching taxes and job interviews alone. So the outcome required general education. So government faces a dilemma. If employment preparation only means teaching universal life skills, then they have completely failed to prove why employment must become the priority of education. Schools can already teach taxes, financial literacy, CV writing, interview skills without redefining the purpose of education. Their benefits are therefore not exclusive to their side. But if employment preparation means teaching students knowledge aligned with specific careers, then our harm still stands. Students are encouraged to specialize earlier, have fewer opportunities to explore different interests, and become increasingly locked into pathways that are financially and professionally difficult to leave. So throughout this debate, government never explains why these pressure would not exist. They simply assert students can change career later, but that is not a rebuttal. They never explain why students would willingly abandon years of education, qualifications, and money and experience to start over in a different position. The existence of a career change does not prove those barriers disappear. So for those reasons, us as team opposition have prevented the more coherent and persuasive case. So for all these reasons, please oppose. Thank you.
So, Judge, this debate actually only comes down to two central clashes: what it means to prepare for the real world and how to create genuine opportunity. The most fatal flaw in the opposition's case is that they lack a total an alternate solution because they spent their entire time attacking our model, panicking what we are forcing students to choose careers too early or lose their future freedom. But they completely failed to provide another method to actually help these students get employed and also get fitted in their future jobs. The oppositions are perfectly content to basically leave these students in stuck in a broken and outdated system that forces them to learn a massive spectrum of random subjects, and they have absolutely no plan for how a student with a purely general education is supposed to compete in like these brutal job markets and shaped by rapid technological disruption. The opposition completely ignores the importance of these skills and for example, what is going to happen when an employee that has an academic degree but has no efficiency and understanding to the job that they're working in? They get unemployed for more space for other high quality employees. And we win this debate because we are the only side that can prove a real path forward for these new graduates. Schools shouldn't be like academic bubbles that pop the second that we graduate, leaving us lost and also broken. It needs to be a very practical launchpad for these graduates to be easily hired in their future careers. And by aligning education with these economic demands and adapting to technological disruption, we finally give students a fighting chance for their future. So this motion must stand, and we are proud to propose.